Fable came out a year ago for the Xbox, and now that it's on the PC, it gains better graphics and controls that are well suited to the PC, and it also gains this new content called The Lost Chapters, which basically extends the storyline past the point where it originally ended. It was designed by visionary developer Peter Molyneux, who's best known for games like Black and White, where you make the calls. And that's true of Fable as well, because it's this game where you start out as a young lad and eventually become this battle-hardened veteran and can either be good or evil and shades in between. It adds up to several hours of new content, and that's actually quite a bit more on top of what the original Fable had to offer. Since the original Fable storyline was actually pretty short, the addition of the Lost Chapters is very welcome, and it helps make this whole game feel more fleshed out and kind of more epic. When the game first starts out, you get the impression that there's going to be a lot of moral decision-making to be done. It turns out that that's more of kind of an undertone of the game, because the main storyline is quite linear, and regardless of whether you take a good or evil approach, it plays out pretty much the same way. The morality system is interesting because you get to see characters respond to you, whether in delight or in fear and things like that, depending on the reputation you build up over time. But it's all kind of window dressing. It doesn't really have a significant impact on gameplay. You may be inclined to specialize in one of these paths, but the game actually encourages you to master a little of each and just have this hybrid character who can handle every situation by himself. There's a cool leveling system where you can really build up your character however you like, but you'll definitely want to kind of dabble in all the different paths, especially in magic, since there's certain spells that really make the combat quite easy and make even the toughest battles in the game relatively simple. Nevertheless, the combat in Fable is actually pretty fun. It's got a good, solid feel to it, and lets you do a lot of different stuff and go toe-to-toe against a number of different enemies that are actually pretty smart. If you wanted to, you could blow through Fable's main storyline in about 10 hours and not get to see a lot of the really interesting optional stuff that's in the game. You could do things like get married, gamble, or trade, and a lot of it is pretty shallow, but it's also pretty neat, especially as you get to see the different characters' reactions to you. A lot of the dialogue is actually pretty funny, so it's great to see just the world of the game act differently depending on your own approach. It's also great to see your own character evolve over time. It's really interesting to look back and realize that he starts off as this kid, and later on you'll look like this battle-scarred old veteran. So that all happens very subtly, and it does really contribute to the sense that this game is going for this epic feel. On top of everything else, Fable's just a beautiful-looking game. Whether it's how your character ages over time or whether it's the environments, it's hard to decide which aspect of the game looks best, but pretty much the whole thing is really impressive to take in. The voice work throughout the game is excellent too, and there's a really nice soundtrack kind of setting the whole tone for the game. Fable: The Lost Chapters isn't really a full-blown RPG. There's limited interaction between you and the other characters, storyline is pretty short, so it doesn't necessarily have all the depth that you might expect out of a game of this nature. Even so, the world of the game is just so imaginative and memorable and often funny, and there are just so many little surprises all throughout the game that it's definitely an entertaining experience, and it's well worthwhile.